God save the King.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Super License F1 podcast. My name's Rodney.
And my name is Zach.
Lately, it's been feeling like a little while between these episodes, and it always feels good. It's like putting on an old jacket or like your old favourite clothes, just stepping into familiar shoes that are all comfy because we've done so many, but it's been a little while.
It has been a little while. I feel like we've been having little snippets of a relationship with the live streams and chats, bits and pieces. And, you know, when there's race weekends on and stuff, you know, we tend to spark up a little bit more in our normal comms. But this makes the actual real podcast recording that much more special. You know, it's like date night.
Yeah, it is. It's a special thing. Sometimes you've just got to put in a little effort to keep the embers glowing. How have you been? How has the last, 3 weeks been? I talked to you about a week ago, but how's it been since the last podcast?
Yep, feels good. Nice to have some European races, of course. You know, the town...
I bet. And I realised this the other day when the British Grand Prix was on that I was like, oh, that's kind of Zach's home race, which makes it, of our show, it's one of our 2 home races, which for some reason that has just never sunk in before for me. The British Grand Prix is a super licensed home race. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, it is one of the super licensed home races. We did it. It felt like it as well. The town was alive with Formula One. It actually wasn't. And partly because, you know, Wimbledon's on. And the Ashes are on. It was a triple sport weekend, which always, you know, makes it tricky. But it does sometimes sneak up on me. Because, where was I? I was somewhere like on Thursday or Friday. And was walking around, I was like, oh, there's a lot of people. I think I was in central London maybe Saturday morning, and I was like, quite a few people walking around with F1 gear today. I was like, oh, yep.
Something
it's
on.
not just a normal F1 weekend, it's Silverstone, so people are getting the train up to the old Silverstone racing track. So it was lovely. It's nice. It's on at a very reasonable hour. The race at 3 p.m. here. That must have been a bit of a late one for you, I'm guessing.
I had stuff to do on the Monday. I went to bed and I did my live stream and then went to bed.
That's nice.
But I watched the replay. It was good. Good race.
Oh, it was a good race. Lots of good racing in the previous couple of races, which is nice. More midfield, but that's okay too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
As I've said to some friends, you've got to pick your midfield drivers and get behind them this season. and you know, find a friend, find a midfield friend, whether that's Yuki Tsunoda or, you know, even a Logan Sargent. You never know what's going to happen. And, you know, there might be some news emerging about whichever midfield driver you choose. Just don't pick anybody who's right at the back because they might not be here for long.
Well, let's get into that. There's a few things a few quickie kick-off things that we want to get into, and I'm happy to let you pick. But I mean, there is obviously, you know, a big Australian elephant in the room. An Australian elephant, most people don't know, but there are Australian elephants. They're sort of a little bit bigger in the sort of nose area. And they hunch their shoulders and giggle a lot. That's an Australian elephant.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to use the British national anthem as the kickoff for this show as a bit of an icebreaker before we got into it. But then, and I had that first on my notes, and then the Riccardo news broke. But let's still start there, and then maybe we can get straight into Riccardo.
Should I look this up on YouTube and react in real time?
So you haven't seen it? Yes, I feel like because you watch the race on the replay, so you probably only watch it from the dun 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 dun.
Yeah, I skipped right to the formation lap, and then I'm like, let's go.
Yes.
What should I type in? Exactly. British Grand Prix saxophone.
No, just type in British Grand Prix. Damien Lewis.
Damien Lewis. All right. And tell me who Damien Lewis is, because I believe he's an actor, and yet he's singing for some reason.
Homeland.
Star? That's what I recognize him from. But now he's got a microphone and sunglasses, and suddenly he thinks he's like Elvis or something.
I think that is part of the reason why I've chosen not to dig in too deep into why he's doing it. Do you think it might have something to do with the Formula One movie and Brad Pitt? Do you think that they're using him as the, like, because they were filming the national anthem as part of the movie?
there's something going on in Formula One where they just don't know how to do this, where they get like Flavor Flav and now this guy. It's like we're on a bad trajectory. They just can't get it quite right. It's like, can we get a great, like, Mum, can we get a great singer? And then Mum says, we've got a great singer at home. And then you get home and it's Damian Lewis.
It's your stepdad. And
should I watch this now? I've got 1 minute.
Yes.
And I can see him and a saxophone player. So I'm feeling good. I'll hit play and you can
talk me through it.
Well, oh no, there's just a still image, but I can hear it.
Oh, you can hear it at least.
Do I need to see it?
No, because I think you can hear him really very much like every actor who maybe isn't a singer learning.
He's like he can't sing, but he's also over singing.
But he's also, he's singing like a stage performer might sing. Like someone who's in a Broadway show that has a bit of singing in it, but is mainly acting. But why the saxophone is what I want to know. Why the saxophone accompaniment? Like, what? They really swung for the fences on this one, I feel like.
It's like a two-person ska band.
Yeah.
God, this is... Oh, no.
It's giving me some scars. It's...
Well, one more question I have is when was it? I mean, I know when, but when did it become "God Save the King"? Is that cool?
Of course. As soon as the Queen died. As soon as the Queen died.
I don't know, man. That song's like, I don't know.
What? Do you think it's?
Well, I mean, that's
a bit
the song.
patriarchal?
I mean, like, if you don't want to sing that song anymore, I get it. But also, like, that's the song. You can't just change the song.
But it's
I care deeply about music and I care about lyrics and that kind of thing.
But it was God Save the King before it was God Save the Queen, though, wasn't it?
Oh, well, whatever.
We changed
I didn't even
it for
know
her.
that. Wasn't the Queen alive for like 90 years or something?
She was alive for 90 years, but she was Queen for like 80 of them, or 75. A long time. But yeah, that's why we're all like, wait a second, we've got to do all this king stuff. Got to swear to the king. You've got to save the king and wish that God would save him. I'm reading the Wales Online article here. Actor Damian Lewis' rendition of the English national anthem ahead of the Formula One British Grand Prix left many viewers, scratching their heads. Best known for TV dramas including Homeland and Band of Brothers, performed a very different edition of God Save the King than we're used to, accompanied by a saxophonist, something that some felt the 52-year-old Lewis style had a touch of an Elvis influence to it. He released his debut music album Mission Creep in June, opened proceedings at the Grid ceremony in front of 160,000 fans. I did see the interview with him afterwards with Sky, and they were like, and he was like, I was so nervous. I couldn't sleep. I'm so nervous. He sold out shows in London. He recently acknowledged how dangerous it was for him to be tiptoeing into another area of the arts. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't, and maybe you're just getting into it because you're famous. But he seems like a nice man. I just don't know why did we choose this? Is it because Americans will know him because of Homeland? And they'll be like, oh, there's that famous American guy. And they'll be like, oh, wait a second, he's British. Anyway.
I mean, I can only imagine a couple of things. Number one, like record companies will pay a lot of money to try and get exposure for their acts. So I'm sure they're like, everyone's talking about Damian Lewis and he's singing. That's going to help us sell a lot of streams. I guess they don't sell CDs anymore. Vinyl. I can't wait to get the next Record Day exclusive vinyl from Damian Lewis. But anyway.
I don't get it. So, yeah. And of all of the brilliant British performers they could have chosen to have.
Yes. This is the tragedy, I think.
This is the, famous man who's a very famous, actor. Let's just have him in it and do it. I wonder how this comes about, because he's had an album released in June. I wonder what record label that is on that is somehow associated with probably one of the media organisations that associated with the promoter of Formula One, and they just went, we'll just get you to sing the national anthem. I don't think it's going to do anything for his record sales, I have to say. I think this is, of all things, is probably a bad move.
That is un-British of you to say that.
Yes. Maybe that's true. So, yeah, there's that.
Have we covered that? Have we done it justice?
I think so. I mean, we could talk about the guys on the hovering jetpack guys who are zipping around tracks as well, but
at Austria,
we don't need to do that though. I mean, that was just
the only thing I saw was the one guy wiping out, and then Oscar Piastri going, "Oh, gee," and I made a little video about it that went out on our Well, I put it out on the YouTube channel and I played it on the stream.
Well, I'm sure we'll be talking
I mean,
about
yeah.
Oscar Piastri today as well. But why don't we... Okay, let's just talk about Daniel Riccardo.
Okay, let's get into it.
Tell me, what are your feelings?
Who is
Hit
he?
me with it. Give me what happened, and then tell me what you think of it.
So what happened? Daniel Ricciardo last year was dropped by McLaren, left without a competitive seat, and refused apparently after having at least one or two offers on the table. He said he didn't want to drive for a back market team. Good news, he's back with a back market team. One of the worst teams on the grid at the moment, AlphaTauri, obviously has been a Red Bull test driver for a little while, but it seems like that was mostly ceremonial. It was mostly an aspirational kind of a thing. I don't think he's been doing a lot of test driving. That said, it seems as though the powers that be at Red Bull have looked within themselves and decided this Nick de Vries fella, who we made a 5-second snap judgment on, turned out that it's his fault that he's not good enough. So he has been shown the door. And Daniel Ricciardo will be slotting back in next to your favourite, Yuki Tsunoda, at AlphaTauri, effective immediately. So I'm sure that Nick de Vries was frog marched out of the building by security. But Daniel Ricciardo, he's friggin' back, and he's got how many races are left? About 12 or so. And I think, I mean, this was maybe you can react to that, and then I have a reaction to your reaction if you want. But Daniel Ricciardo is back. He's definitely not at the front-running team, so hypocrite. But also, what does it mean? Why did he come back?
I really don't think... I mean, he's basically said around, like, he doesn't think his F1 career is over. So it seemingly has gone downhill since he left Red Bull. It just never clicked anywhere else. But it also wasn't going to quite work at Red Bull when he left either. But they love him over there. They really, really, really do. Like, Max likes him, Daddy Horner really likes him as well. Interestingly, it sounds like Helmut Marko's a little bit iffy on him, but that doesn't. Helmut Marko, I don't know. He's hit and miss with picking drivers. I think that
loose unit.
You know what? Helmut Marko reminds me of like someone who thinks they know the stock market. When really, when they hit, it's luck, and they never talk about their losses. And really, if they'd just done nothing and just bought an index fund, you would have made more money as opposed to listening to your friend who's like, hey, bet big on company X. They're going to be awesome. I got on the inside track. Helmut Marko thinks he's got the golden
to
touch.
The moon.
Yeah, when really, how many great drivers has Helmut Marko plucked from obscurity? One, and that guy's dad was a Formula One driver too. So, okay, cool. Maybe Sebastian Vettel as well, I guess. But no, basically none of them other ones have been a hit. And he said himself, he's like, yeah, we're running pretty dry on driver talent in this Red Bull, talent conveyor. So Daniel Ricciardo's a known quantity.
That does seem to be one of the things along the lines of why did they bring Nick de Vries in the first place? Well, because apparently there's a stable of young drivers on their books, but they were all judged to not be ready, and they needed Nick de Vries because no one else was ready. And now, all of a sudden, they've decided not only was Nick de Vries not the right guy, but again, no one else in the stable is ready, and we need Daniel. Please save us, Daniel. You're our savior.
But they did this before. Big Hard Hartley was exactly this. Guy had won Le Mans, WEC, won all these other Formula, and they were like, yes, you've got seniority, you know what you're doing, you'll just be able to step in and drive a Formula One car, right? And he was like, of course. And of course he could drive it, but he couldn't drive it really, really well. And Nick de Vries, I was never convinced, unfortunately. These days, if you're not in Formula One by the time you're about 19, then I think you're in real trouble. And I just don't think you know the stuff. And I think that's what makes drivers like Ricciardo, Hülkenberg, even Alonso. Obviously, Alonso's incredible. There's just something about having been in Formula One before and for a while. It's actually one of the reasons I've said that I think Lance Stroll is actually probably going to continue to have a Formula One career now, because he's been in it for ages. And he knows how Formula One works, and it's a bit of this closed door. And even though you're Nick de Vries, Formula 2 champion, all that kind of stuff, it's still small leagues, though. Like, it's still not the thing. There is nothing like Formula One. And, I think what I love about this timeline, though, is that, you think about the comms from earlier this season where Horner and Red Bull were like, yeah, Daniel, we're so glad to have him back as reserve driver. And immediately Perez would have been like, oh, fuck, this guy. I mean, the one thing he doesn't have is
Yes.
huge sponsorship money. So, okay, cool. My seat's probably safe. And I'm doing pretty well. And I showed last year I'm a great number 2 driver. And then he starts failing. And Daniel, and then all the rumors are, or all the chat is like, oh, Daniel learned all these really weird things at McLaren. We've got to shake him out of this. You know, he's still quite a lot behind. And then catches up, does a tire test yesterday morning, and they were immediately like, "Oh no, he's fine. Get him in another car,
here's
quick!"
The guy. I very much got the feeling they were extremely ready to do that, and if Daniel got around one lap without winning it, he was probably going to be given the job. That's literally it, right? Because you start to see there's certain Formula One journalists you can follow on Twitter, and when they sort of hint around something, you kind of know that they've got the inside line, but it's like hush hush, can't announce this until tomorrow or whatever. But you can kind of read between the lines and pick up the signals. So I mean, on one hand I was surprised, on the other hand I wasn't. I have to kind of wonder. Daniel sort of said, like, yeah, I don't want to go back. I don't want to make up the numbers at the back of the grid, which is that's his prerogative. But it always seems strange that he took up a reserve driver role at Red Bull. But I have to wonder whether in the back of his mind he kind of suspected something is always going to happen here because there are a bunch of loose units running this operation and they've got 2 teams and there's a good chance that the Skittles will fall and who will be there to pick them up? Yeah. Old mate Danny Rick. Hey. And I have to wonder too, especially because of the cloud, I would say, that's over Sergio Perez at the moment, that Daniel is seriously licking his lips going, all I have to do is just beat Yuki Tsunoda like a couple of times. And I will be like number 1 back in the running for if they want to replace Perez. I kind of have to wonder whether that would have been an option that he would have looked at if it weren't for the fact that they were the feeder team, if you like, into Red Bull, because I don't know that he would have taken a similar option at, Alfa Romeo right now,
No, exactly. I mean, I'm sure, I wonder if he looked at someone like even like Daniel Kvyat, who was dropped from Toro Rosso, went in third driver at Ferrari, and just stayed close to Formula One, right? Even though he wasn't at another team, and then came back to Toro Rosso and raced for 2 more seasons for them. It was just there is seemingly just a dearth of either you've got to be an absolute wonderkind, or you have to have Formula One experience. It's the only thing. And you're right. He would have been fun to be at Red Bull. They're a fun brand to be at. Perez just doesn't suit the vibe, I don't think, at Red Bull. And I think he's a good driver. He just doesn't, he's not it for them. And I think that I think Red Bull would rather just be winning a lot of races as opposed to having this. They've done it now. Okay, we're back on it. We know we got the fastest car. It's a shame, though, that Perez can't really get into Q3 anymore. He's not getting any luck. It's just not working out for him.
It's like he thinks, hey, number 1. Yeah, baby. Forget number 3. I'm out in number 1.
Yeah. So, no. There is such a clear path for Daniel Riccardo. And it shows how much they wanted to get him back in their car as well, that they didn't even wait to the mid-season break. That they just went, fuck it. And it sounds like they told De Vries almost like it came out through the Dutch media, right? And so, they just told De Vries to just get out of the building. It was that just no, you know what, you suck. And the car's not very good. They've scored basically no points. Sonoda's wrangling it around the track, and oh man, it sucks for him that he's
Old Mate Forge came through on the Discord with a snapshot of Christian Horner's Instagram. And on Instagram it says liked by, and then one person, and then 100,000 more. It says liked by Max Verstappen. So bloody Nick De Vries' countryman has done him dirty on the announcement post that Daniel Ricciardo is replacing him.
Max and Daniel get along like a house on fire. Now, there was one more thing that I thought a good friend of the show, of Box and Neutrals fame, and of Fox Sports fame apparently as well, Michael Laminato, wrote in his piece saying that, Daniel's got these 12 races now to really prove himself because there are other people. And maybe, so why did he choose to take this slot as opposed to maybe, why does he want to trundle around in the back when maybe he could try to get the Red Bull seat, at the end of the season? And maybe because Liam Lawson, 21-year-old New Zealander, quote, is doing impressive things in Japan's tough Super Formula series, which is where Gasly came from. And that is kind of looking like maybe he's next in line He's the most senior
Yeah.
driver in the program. He's next in line for AlphaTauri.
Yes.
So Tauri, sorry. I know I always do that. So AlphaTauri, it could
So
make sense then to go and pop Daniel in the big boy team, and then this Liam Lawson guy can come in, and then in a couple of years, Liam can go drive for Red Bull. Or be turfed out to Alpine or whatever.
I've heard that the powers that be at Red Bull really rate that Super Formula, whatever it is, championship. They're like, that's the one. I guess because Gasly, has come through the goods in some ways. So they really rate it. So I guess Liam Lawson doing well in that formula would be perhaps even almost better than blooding him into the AlphaTauri. So we shall see. I guess it's not going to be much longer before we get to see Daniel back behind the wheel. It's just a shame. I mean, my heart goes out to Will Arnett, who's now got to find another co-host through his friggin' co-stream of whatever.
Well, can't they just mic Daniel up during the race and he can kind of give info?
I guess he could.
Maybe? I don't know. Oh, this race. When is it? When's the Hungary race? It's a couple of weeks away.
It's a week and a half. Well, at the time of recording.
Okay, perfect. At least that's not too far away. And we'll see, but it's a real challenge for Daniel. This car is not easy to drive. It's a bad car. And
it's not good. Yeah, tell you, I was going to say, this is a neat segue into his old team and the team and the personnel that are being like pegged as his nemesis now, Zach Brown. But I'll tell you, who's having the last laugh right now is Zach Brown and McLaren, because they got a little rocket on their hands right now from basically out of nowhere. They've just like lolled right past Mercedes, Ferrari, and Aston Martin, and from out of nowhere, McLaren are the goods.
I couldn't really believe it. Like, I was like, okay, maybe that's just some good Saturday pace. But they were convinced that it was more than that. And every other team and every other journalist around the broadcast and around the race weekend was like, no, that car's good. That's a genuinely good car. And Silverstone's tricky. And this is all going to be fine. And this is not like weird damp track stuff or anything like that. It's just a really fast car. I think we'd seen a little bit of it from Lando the previous race, right, in Austria, because only Lando's car had upgrades and Oscar's didn't. And then, so I watched qualifying on Saturday at Silverstone, obviously from my comfy couch, not at Silverstone, but watching Silverstone on the television. And you have that feeling through qualifying where, okay, the first part of Q3, McLaren's put up some good times, but, they'll fall down through the cracks of that. And there was 14 seconds or something where it looked like Lando had secured pole, and then Verstappen just turned the car up to probably 6 out of 10 and dropped it in a quarter of a second faster. But then to see Oscar Piastri, qualifying third, I was like, when both cars do that well, and especially with a rookie, it's really quick. Like that wasn't just that, because everything kind of has to go right for you to qualify on the front row, I think, in Formula One these days. And so it's more than that. Like, that car is compensating even more for them. And it's very, very, very fast down the straights, which is what you need to do to be able to compete with Red Bull. And it wasn't fait accompli. If anything, I thought that Oscar Piastri had probably the best start of everybody and got stuck behind.
He got caught, yeah.
Yeah, Max and Lando. And there was a real opportunity there, if things had gone slightly differently, to have an Australian lead of Formula One Grand Prix for the first time in a long time. But overall, they raced beautifully.
They made an amazing start, but they were always probably going to be like outraced over a race distance by the Red Bull, because it's just a beast. It just has so much. And the thing that I've noticed about Verstappen is that he knows he's got the fastest car. He even if he loses the lead on the first corner, he kind of, if he doesn't get it straight back, he plays the smart long game, and you can almost write it down. 6 laps from now, he'll be back challenging, and he really builds the momentum again. It's almost like he lulls them into a false sense of security, and then he's like, nah, just kidding, and he drives past them. But I've noticed that as a tactic of his. He keeps his cool.
It could be a little bit of the Mercedes.
The other thing is, I'm sure it was, I watched the replay, and I was nearly deafened by the roar when Lando Norris took the lead on that first corner. That was a sensational moment, and I'm sure all of Britain was jumping on the podium when it was Lando Norris and then Lewis Hamilton, who, you have to say, got incredibly lucky with the late safety car, but what a podium for the British. Under the circumstances, probably the best you could hope for. If only old mate George Greg Russell could have snuck in there somehow or been close, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that what was refreshing as well is that the teams, we had an interesting podium that was a mix of luck. Like, it's good for the Mercedes story because they've slowly been clawing it back. They are just like, all right, throw that shit part out. We tried working on that for a year and it just is the wrong development track. And then they throw another part of the car out. They're like, we need to do the floor. And they just like almost like race by race. They are redefining what their car actually is and how it should be. How it should be more basically exactly the same as the Red Bull. So it's like their slow progression continues, but it does just show how far McLaren just jumped in one set of upgrades, that they were able to kind of scoot past all of that. And even though they kind of got a little bit unlucky with the safety car, like it didn't work out perfectly for Oscar Piastri, obviously, but they were still just fast enough on the day to make overtakes when they needed to. And they were hanging on to Max for a little while. And I was going to say before that I wonder, it would be really interesting to see how well Max would go with some of the cars now that are starting to catch up to Red Bull, how that Red Bull goes following. Because it used to be you just drive around the other cars, and because he just had so much raw pace. But as I think we're seeing a little bit with Chico Perez, everyone was like, oh, he'll just drive past the whole field. Didn't really happen though, did it? Like, I think that, Ferrari and maybe not Aston Martin, we can talk about them, but Ferrari are making gains, Mercedes are making gains, McLaren obviously made gains. So I think the new formula status quo is kind of, it's starting to shake out a little bit. Like this always happens. It takes 2 seasons, then everyone's on basically the exact same design for the formula, and then it's just about who's got more money to kind of eke out a little bit more, or maybe the better drivers. We're starting to see, I think, a little bit more of that equilibrium too.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was going to say we should probably get on to Aston Martin because it felt like just about every podcast we did, we were talking about Fernando Alonso smashing it home with the podium while old mate Lance Stroll was sort of in midfield or low points. But and I know Lewis Hamilton was asking questions like, how have McLaren come from out of nowhere and jumped us? What the fuck is going on? But Aston Martin was the one who seems to have been not just like holding station, but they seem to have actually gone backwards. And my understanding is that they brought some upgrades, but maybe they brought some downgrades instead of upgrades. They went the wrong direction. Whoops.
Wrong direction. That does happen. Just a clerical error there. Oh, you meant up, not down.
Oh, damn. Whoops. Hey, you went in faster. Oh.
Yeah, but it's interesting that those upgrades those big jumps are there. Like, one of the other people we should probably talk about, right, is Alexander Albon.
God, he's smashing it.
Yeah, right. And that seems like, talk about, not necessarily a redemption arc, because I just don't think he necessarily went anywhere. But again, just he's always been a bit spunky, but maybe not confident enough on the track. But then maybe again, you look at his career and you're like, maybe you just haven't had a very good car. And I was writing off Williams, as little as like 3 or 4 races ago, to be like, is there just like, what's the point at this point? But Albon, 8th, qualified really well. Yeah. Just a good race weekend,
like pretty regularly. Like maybe not every week, but every other week he's been there. So it's not a fluke.
Yeah, I mean, even Logan Sargent qualified. He finished 11th. I mean, Logan Sargent.
I don't know if you saw the clip that I played out when I did the last live stream from the last weekend. But have you seen it where he basically he's so tall and he hunches over and his back as he gets thrown around in the car, his back, the skin on his back basically like rips open.
What?
And he's like, yeah, and then it heals, and then by the time it heals, there's another race, and it rips open again. And he was talking to Jensen Button like, hey, you must have had this when you were driving, like how your skin rips open. And Jensen Button's like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not normal, bro.
Now, you're wondering why we called you Logan. You are Wolverine. That's why.
Loganes.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
anyone else you want to talk about?
I mean, it's been interesting, right? That there was, if we're going to talk about Aston Martin a little bit, Fernando's trying his best, and the Aston Martin, has a good amount of investment. I'm sure they'll bring their upgrades at another point for the, but as you get into the second half, though, it starts to get to this point where people start to go like, okay, well, how much spend do we have, and when do we start developing next year's car? Next year? All of that kind of stuff. But
just going to bring up the standings. Have a bit of a look.
Let me bring up the
because I
settings.
did predict did predict Lance that Fernando Alonso would double Lance Stroll for points. For a while there, he had nearly 3 or 4 times as many points. Right now, Lance Stroll, 44 points. Fernando Alonso, 137. It's quite a lot more. The worrying thing for Lance Stroll is it looks like those podiums and potential wins, they don't look like they're coming back to the team anytime soon. So this may actually play out throughout the year now, because it's going to be table scraps for the rest of the year. So he's got. Yeah. I don't see him clawing this back. He's going to finish way behind this year.
Yeah, I think that it is. It's not to say that Aston Martin necessarily need to be winning heaps of races or anything like that. I think it's more that they want to be up at the front. Like, that's the brand play, right? You know, you're up at the front. You're sponsored by Aramco and all this kind of stuff. Like, you want brand. You want to be, shown to be doing well, right? So having a good brand experience and brand awareness is a big play for them. And if Lance isn't up there at all and not really doing much to help with that at all, then I know Daddy owns the team and all that kind of stuff, but at what point maybe is it time to start thinking about a different driver who could maybe perform a little bit better? Do you think they would ever do that?
Stranger things have happened, but no, I don't realistically, I don't think it would happen. But then again, if it did happen, I would understand it. I was just looking at the points though. I said, calling out Lance Stroll, 44 points. Lando Norris, recent podium getter, 42 points. So I was thinking, what if Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri jump up above and finish the year above Fernando Alonso? It will close the gap between Alonso and Norris and Stroll and make it look a bit better, but maybe it actually won't, because they're already both behind Lance Stroll, so it might only serve to push him further down in standings.
It's a lot of ground to make up. Fernando's on quite a lot of points.
That's true.
But I suppose it does, it is, what is maybe a little bit interesting is if, Aston's also got 181 constructors' points as well. Interesting. Mercedes has overtaken Aston Martin now, which is kind of the status quo restored. I don't think McLaren are in a position to necessarily be we can go and break it. They've lost so much ground to begin with.
Yes,
the first half of the season was absolutely dominated by 4 teams, and the rest of the teams have just been, scooping up crumbs and putting them in their pockets and saving them for a rainy day. Maybe, and these types of upgrades only work for a little while, I think, is what we've seen. McLaren's made a jump now. They've probably just caught the other teams that may be at a different period. Look, maybe they're onto something amazing with the car and it's just going to be excellent. That doesn't seem like it would be right. I don't think I'd be expecting McLaren on the podium for the rest of the season, but they should be shooting for that kind of result, because Sergio Perez isn't doing much, and I don't think that the Mercedes are super consistent, and Ferrari just is stuck. They're just absolutely stuck in this rut of not knowing whether to risk or not, and when they do risk, they risk the wrong thing. It's past being a meme now. It does just seem like there is something that they can't go any further with as a racing team, and they just need a full, I don't know, maybe they just need somebody completely different to come and shake down the whole org. But then they're stuck in this thing as well of they can't do a rebuild, because they can't afford to be the worst team in Formula One for a season or something like that. You can't really, they just kind of have to keep topping up. But someone like Charles Leclerc, does he want to be there forever? Not winning really anything? I'm sure he would happily jump in a Red Bull or a McLaren or something like that at this point, because Ferrari's just, I'm sure it's a nice life, but it must be frustrating to feel like you're not being given the platform to excel. And that's what always irked Russell, for example. He was just just get me in a good car and I know I'll be awesome. And even now he's yeah, cool. I know that Mercedes is just having a little bit of a troubling period, but they'll be back. And I don't think you could say the same thing.
He's doing okay though. And he had the best of Lewis this weekend at the Britain Grand Prix.
Exactly.
Lewis's home turf. This is his stage. And then Russell seemed to have his measure during the race. So yeah, it was a typical Lewis performance to eke out a podium when really there wasn't really one in the offering for him. But I think Russell's been actually doing quite well since they became teammates.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that I know that you're a big fan of looking for the close battles, picking your buddies, making buddies with someone on the grid. It could be a buddy, your buddy could be a team. I think it augurs well for the rest of the season if you do that, especially from the midfield, because that's where all the action will be for sure. I was going to say that we've probably got maybe 2 topics left and then the super quiz, and that will bring us home for this week. So out of the 2024 calendar or track limits, which one do you want to start with?
Oh, maybe we shouldn't give track limits too much time. So let's talk about the calendar.
We don't have to. Maybe we start with that one and knock it on the head.
Okay, too many track limits. Let them drive wherever they like. And I don't know. I think I put in the notes there, spike strips or at least gravel tips. I know they're talking about this for Austria. Like, we're just going to run gravel right up to the edges so that if people...
It's been recommended and they just won't do it. So
yeah, because that'll be bad for Max, because Max loves getting up on the track limits.
What's bad for Max? I mean, the real thing is, hey, drivers, keep it on the track and then you won't get penalties. Simple as that.
But there was just... Didn't they say there was something like 1,000... Like some insane amount of infringements they had to go through.
So not even all the in-race ones, 1,200 post-race incidents they investigated.
Exactly. So at some point, they can't give... Okay, it took us, to the evening that day to get the actual finalised results, which everyone fucking hates. And would be way worse today in a really close season. Like, thank God that race wasn't decided on those track limits.
I had flashbacks to that year Riccardo was on the podium and we hung out for like 8 hours waiting for the news of whether Riccardo was going to get disqualified.
Fuel rate limiter. Fuel flow rate. That was the day. Wow.
It's true.
I swore I'd never become an F1 guy like that who would remember.
Didn't even know those words, but somehow we do. I thought we sorted this out where they put a sensor in the car and the car would trigger a thing where if you went out off the track, it would... I mean, can't we just automate this? I mean, the real problem is how many times it happened, drivers not getting adequate warnings, timely warnings during the race where they could address their... Like, okay, sure, I'm going off the track all the time, fine. But where's the warnings? Why didn't you warn me? Because if you had warned me and given me a warning, I would have stopped, for example. That's something they could say. But I thought we solved this, and it seems like we haven't.
No, it still feels like we're kind of nowhere near it. I mean, it's just... I feel like it's also a bit of a... This is partly, for me at least, the kind of F1 and Liberty Media and the kind of F1 management versus FIA thing, where it's like you need sporting bodies to run the conduct of how the races should be and all this kind of stuff. Otherwise you get like the NBA where the rules aren't really followed at all. Like people travel all the time, like people carry the ball. Like it's not really about the rules, it's about the show. And Formula One only works when it's kind of stringently organized. Like you have to have quite strong restrictions for it to kind of deliver on its promise of being like the peak thing and for it to be competitive. But the track limits stuff, I really feel like has only really come about for us as tracks have added more run-off zones and safety zones and all that kind of stuff. And we talk about it every time. The only thing to do is to make it not faster to go off the track.
Yes,
that is the only way to do it, because they'll just never be able to do the penalties in time or have the right amount of penalties, all that kind of stuff. So, and at the tracks where you can't do that happen, make that happen. Sorry, that's just it. Then just let them run off. Totally. Fine,
I was saying the same thing when I cover this on the live stream, and there's a little mini video out if anyone wants to, if they just can't get enough of track limits and they just got to bloody hear more about it, bro. But there's, I made the point that, they always talk about, well, drivers might leave the track here or there, but they don't get an advantage by doing it. And it's like, they do get an advantage. That's why they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're not making mistakes. They're not like, it's really hard to stay on that part of the track. It's like, no, it's not. You could slow down. I don't know if it could slow down. Actually, one thing we didn't talk about that was from this recent weekend was during qualifying when Max Verstappen got understeer coming out of his garage and smashed into the other side of the pit wall. Did you see this?
I did see this.
Poor guy. I mean, because I was like, there is no way he made, that was like a little mistake on his part. He just he just didn't turn. I can imagine. I mean, he only got it a little wrong, and it was pretty tight. I watched him the next time out where he went a lot slower and seemed to get the lock on a bit earlier, but it does seem tight. But, just between you and me, understood. Boy, the British commentators didn't mind watching the replays of that. Oh, no, they did not. And he really
took a little bit too much joy in watching it. That's all.
Really hit it. I remember one time early in my driving career, of having a driver's license, I mean, a regular license, not a super license. Went down to pick up our takeaway order from an Indian restaurant and was doing a 3-point turn behind the restaurant on a side street.
Oof.
And I remember just getting close to this, and I just hear, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
what have I hit there? Have I hit anything? I don't think I'm that close to that wall behind me. I get home, it's dark, and I look at the car. I was like, oh, there's a massive, big split down that rear bumper there.
Oh, no.
Ugh. It wasn't too new a car or anything, but I was like, oh, maybe I'll just... No one's really going to notice tonight. I'll save this for tomorrow. Let's have dinner first.
At one point, as a bit of a casual job, my job was to drive new cars and deliver them to people who bought them. So if they were buying a new car, trading their old car, I would deliver them their new car, go, there you go, enjoy.
No, I didn't know this about you.
And, I mean, it was, they weren't like flashy sports cars or anything, but they were nice. And one day I got in one and I was trying to drive it out of the garage and there was a car blocking the way. But it looked narrow, but it looked like I could get through. And the guy said, don't worry, just wait 1 more minute. I'll go get the keys and move that car so you can get out. I was like, nah, it's fine. So he ran off to get the keys. But while he was gone, I was like, I'll show this guy, show him my maneuvering skills. Okay. And it was one of those really narrow, old garage brick sides. And got close, put a big scrape right down the door and then had to call the guy who I was supposed to deliver this brand new car to say, very sorry, we're getting your door resprayed because I accidentally scraped it against the wall. Wasn't a good day.
That's like nightmare fuel for me. Like that would be a bad dream. If that had happened to me, I think I would probably have that dream twice a month. Wake up in a cold sweat and I'd be like, oh my God, no. Oh, mate, I still have bad dreams about like turning up to an exam that I've got to I'm waking up being like, God, I wish I'd passed that exam and gotten my marketing degree. And I was like, I did get my marketing degree. What are you thinking about?
You did. You passed and you got it, but you're still anxious about what if I didn't though?
So stupid. I sometimes then look at the photo of me holding my degree being like, that happened, right? Yeah, good.
Don't take my adult card away.
Oh, God.
Any thoughts about the 2024 calendar, bro?
Yeah, I like the idea of some Saturday night races, I think, maybe.
Mate, I bloody love this. This is the best news for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because those races in particular are like 1 a.m. starts, like midnight start. I'm like, that's too late. Too late on a school night. But,
so does this mean then we're just going to have short race weekends that weekend? So
I think they move everything earlier. So qualifying Friday, practice Thursday, and it's only the Bahrain and Saudi Grand Prix and apparently this year and I think next year Las Vegas as well is on Saturday. So don't miss out. This it took me, I had to read the story 3 times because it was all about next year, but it was talking about how this year Las Vegas is on Saturday. I'm like, I'll take your word for it, Lawrence Barretto. But that's one of the stories. The other element of the story is 24 races, which, man, that's a lot of races.
More
Another
content.
element of the story, yes, we should talk about, and this is more in your wheelhouse, I believe, is the claim of the reduced emissions because they've clustered the races together more. Any thoughts or feelings about that?
Yeah, they all look really close together, Rod. Oh my,
So
do they look
close.
really close. I mean, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, yeah, sure, they're close together.
That's the thing.
Back to back.
Some of them are,
Great.
but some of them are very much
Right, and then off to Australia for a random. Like that's not close to anything. Like that's the long flight that you take when you're coming from Europe to Australia. Yeah. Like that's the longer part. So that's the other side of the world. And then off to Japan. That's another 10-hour flight from Australia. So and it's also 2 weeks later. So that's not regionalized. Yep. And then China, which is that is closer to Japan than Australia is also 2 weeks later. So Japan just kind of sits in the middle there. As the team's going to hang out there, they're not going to fly all the parts back. I mean, they definitely.
I guess you could send the freight over. You could freight all your stuff while you go and have a week off in I don't know, Bali or wherever you want.
Yeah, of course. I
don't think Lewis Hamilton will be hanging around for a week between Japan and China.
Yep. Then 2 weeks later again, we whip off to Miami just quickly, and then whip back to
That's the
Europe.
worst part of it.
Another 2 weeks as well. So that doesn't feel regionalised. So, and then I suppose you could argue all of Europe is regionalised, except for the Canadian part, which isn't, which happens every year. I still don't understand why we don't put Canada before we come to Europe.
Well, they don't want to. They just refuse. They just won't do it.
Oh, it's so weird. And then I suppose you could argue that all the European races are all regionalised, and Azerbaijan,
Europe,
yes, and then Singapore, no, to US, no, and then you've got another regionalised section of the
US one's okay.
US, Mexico, Brazil, Las Vegas.
Brazil, Las Vegas. I mean, it's probably as good as you could hope for, really.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of doing an up and down circuit But I mean, Brazil
Yep.
to Las Vegas is not too short of a distance. So they're on different parts of like one's South America, one's North America, so different continents. So, as far as hemispherically regionalized go, yes. And then Qatar and Abu Dhabi, to finish, they're very close together as well. I think it's a bullshit claim. I basically don't think, other than the European part of the calendar, you could have made them more far away from each other.
Yeah.
If anything,
I think
you were trying to decide to define how to make a calendar less regionalized, I would probably do this.
Look, I mean, there are some things about the changes that are good. We know for a fact that they want to squeeze more races into this calendar if they can, and they're looking for ways to do that. This is the first step in them doing that. The problem is the claim, and the motivation for it is an environmental one, which I don't entirely buy. Like, there's definitely benefits to it, but just don't come out and try and convince me about your credentials as an innovator in sustainability when that's just not true. But look, I mean, small wins. That's the approach I'm taking. Small wins, but don't let them get away with like patting themselves on the back and saying what a good job they've done reducing emissions, because that's not what this is about.
No, exactly. That's
not that this has to be a big ad for the live stream or things that come out of it, but I did do a big video about like putting all the races into Google Earth and jumping from one to another. Ooh. So if you want to see for about 20 minutes or so me jumping from one race to another, you can actually see for yourself how much the world spins as we go through all the races in the season. But
what we should do instead, if we're really regionalised, we should make the teams come out with a set amount of kit that they can't restock for those regional sections. So it's like, these are the parts you've got for this next 3-race sprint, like, or 3-race region.
Oh, okay.
This is it. These are the parts. You've packed your luggage, and that's it. And so it ends up being like one big like endurance portion of the calendar. That would be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
No more, because, they ship in parts overnight from random places. When you break a couple of front wings, they're like, oh, all right, we'll just ship one over, but from the factory all the way over to Brazil. Come on, get on the plane, fly it overnight. So you can on a private jet. Here we go. So, yeah, I'm sure that's not bad for the environment. Anyway.
But more to be done.
So we nailed track limits, we've nailed the calendar, we've talked about Daniel Riccardo and how the world has returned to 2 Australians on the grid. Never more than 2, but never less than 1, the rules of Formula 1. Do you want to move on to a super quiz?
Let's do a super quiz.
We will accept a couple of questions. Should one only win one? Would one want to have won that one in round 1?
Can you repeat the question?
We had it in the notes to talk about, but we steered all the way away from it. Brad Pitt driving a Formula 1 car this weekend at the British Grand Prix as part of filming for an upcoming movie.
He actually played the saxophone.
Don't even worry about it, because guess what the bloody quiz is about?
No.
Actors, celebrities. The name of the quiz is Celebrities Driving F1 Cars Drinking Isotonic Rehydrating Fluids Quiz.
Tell me more about the isotonic fluids.
Well, I assume that's what it is. I don't really know. I know that if you drink isotonic stuff, it rehydrates you. So I assume it's something like that.
Yep, I do.
But they don't drink coffee is the point.
Definitely not.
Anyway, do you know much about the Brad Pitt Formula 1 endeavour?
I keep confusing myself to think about whether there's any information about it or there's lots and I just have missed one big article. But
that's
no,
the thing.
I don't know much about it.
I feel like before this weekend, everything was kept under wraps. All of a sudden, after the race was finished, everybody had like a video feature or had written up articles and stuff about it. So I think the cat's well and truly out of the bag. But it's something that I was sort of keeping one eye on just out of interest. But I also thought, Brad Pitt's driven an F1 car. But I wonder if any other actors or anyone else famous has driven an F1 car or a racing car. And there's a little bit. So that's what the quiz is about.
Wow.
Kicking off said quiz, which it'll be interesting to see how you go in this one. The question, the number 1... Brad Pitt obviously will be headlining this upcoming F1 movie about he and his Formula 1 endeavours with Apex Grand Prix. But Zach, tell me, do you know Brad Pitt's character name in the upcoming movie?
No, I don't. Oh, man. Should I guess? I think I should
You
probably
have a guess. Think very American-sounding, sort of like cringy almost.
Is it like... I'm thinking Steele as the surname. I'm thinking like Daniel Steele, something like that.
Danielle Steele, the romance writer?
Danielle Steele, yeah. Fuck yeah, Danielle Steele isn't a romance writer. Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, sure. No.
Well, you're all around it. You're in the ballpark, but not quite right. The name is Sunny Hayes.
Oh, God. Just out in the pasture one day where Dan's like,
isn't it bad?
And there's hay, sunny haze. Yeah, that's no good.
It's like it's very sunny, and there's like a haze from the sun. Like, oh man, what a sunny haze! It's just not a good name. Question the number 2. When you go looking for Hollywood actors who have driven cars, another big name comes up. Only bloody Tom Cruise. So the question is, we go all the way back to 2011.
Okay.
Tom Cruise does a test in a proper F1 car.
Okay.
The question for you, Zach, is which team was it with?
This feels like a stunt that
For sure.
Lotus would do.
Oh, Lotus. They did a truck jumped over one, I believe.
Yep.
Known for their stunts. Famous.
Yep. Or a Red Bull, but I'm going to lock in Lotus. Were they even racing in 2011? Probably. Yeah, okay. Lotus.
No, you should have gone with Red Bull. But I'll give you half a point because you had it. It was on the tip of your tongue. Stunt, I thought when you were going to say stunt, you're like, oh, he's got it now. Red Bull.
Yeah.
The team that put the Star Wars logo on their car and had Chewbacca handing out trophies or fucking whatever.
Forgot about that. Oh, never forget.
Great. So great. Question the number 3. You might remember this old actor. This is before your time and before my time, but the name Steve McQueen.
Yes.
Ring a bell? Mm-hmm. Very big into cars, big into racing cars. I believe touring cars, not F1 cars, but touring cars.
Yes.
But obviously Steve McQueen, that name lives on with the lead character in a Pixar movie named after him. Zach, what's the name of that Pixar movie?
It's Cars. It's Lightning McQueen.
Of course it is. Bloody Lightning McQueen. You're on board.
Yes. And have you seen the clip so in the second Cars film, I want to say, there's a Formula One car, and it's voiced, depending on which country your Cars 2 or 3 came out in, is voiced by a different Formula One driver. So in Spanish markets, it's Fernando Alonso. In UK and I think US markets, it's Lewis Hamilton. And in Germany and Switzerland and a few other countries, it's Sebastian Vettel.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I'm going to have to go and watch all the different ones. Yes. Cars 2, the worst of the 3 Cars 2 movies, by the way.
Okay. Cars 1, the best.
Stick with Cars 1, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't get too deep into the lore of how the Cars universe works, because everything Cars?
Kiddies, no big scary scene, which is actually very helpful.
What's the big scary scene in the second one? Is there a car crash?
It's just a bad movie. I'm saying Cars 1, good movie with no scary scenes. It's surprising how many kids' movies, quote-unquote kids' movies, have this scene that, terrifies kids and gives them nightmares for weeks.
Yeah, but that's what we cut our teeth on, mate. Like Gremlins and The Never-Ending Story. It's got to have some pain. You've got to be scared. Otherwise, what trauma will you take into your adult life that you'll internalize, and then it'll have power you like an internal combustion engine?
Yeah, well. Question the number 4. The movie Rush. We saw it. We went to the premiere, actually, which was really fun. Chris Hemsworth, Daniel Brühl playing James Hunt.
Glad you didn't ask me who played Niki Lauda, because I wouldn't have remembered that guy's name.
In the global sensation that was Rush, directed by Zach fill in the blank. Who directed it? Famous director.
Yeah.
Big prestige director.
Yeah, Ronald McDonald Howard.
What's his name? Ron Howard, exactly.
Wow,
a director who, when I started getting into movies, he was nobody or directed some crap. But all of a sudden, in my lifetime, he's like the Oscar bait guy.
He did American Graffiti, right?
No, George Lucas did American Graffiti.
Did he? Why was I thinking Ron Howard? Is he in it?
Ron Howard is in it, I believe.
That's what I'm thinking
of. Harrison Ford and everybody.
Yeah. The fact, God, I remember when my dad was like, we should watch this film. And I was like, I beg your pardon.
Oh, such a dad film.
Why is Harrison Ford in this? And why is it directed
exactly. Why is he not cool?
Francis Ford Coppola produced it. Interesting. Very interesting.
1, 2, 3, 4. Question the number 5. Going all the way back to 1972 for the film Weekend of a Champion, the extremely uber-cancelled Roman Polanski-directed feature, which looks at a weekend in Monaco, highlighting which famous driver from the 70s.
1972. The 70s. That's a little pre-Senna.
Yes.
And pre.
Do you want nationality?
Yeah.
Scottish?
Oh, it's Jackie Stewart.
Old mate Jackie Stewart, you got it. Very
Well done. That was a good hint. That was a solid hint because it
Solid,
wasn't going to
pretty
be
solid,
David Coulthard.
Name the only famous Scottish driver from that era.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely
Are
redeemed
we allowed to
yourself.
watch
We're
that
really,
film?
I mean, I think it's
No.
interesting, but obviously, I mean, that person whose name I won't repeat, I really like his films from that era, but obviously incredibly mega cancelled now.
Yeah.
Last question, Zach. Obviously, there's one. You can even guess who this question is about. I'll give you a bonus point if you can guess which actor turned racer this question's about.
So before you even ask the question,
Yep, just guess.
is it?
I'll give you a bonus point if you can guess which person it's.
Patrick Dempsey.
Of course, it is Patrick Dempsey. Patrick McDreamy Dempsey. The real question, though, Zach, is he's raced. He's raced a whole bunch of stuff, but he's done the Le Mans 24.
Yeah.
How many times? Do you want a multiple choice or do you want to have a stab?
I'm going to say he's raced 5 times, but he didn't race this year. I don't think.
So close. 4 times. Really
I thought
giving it.
Yeah, I think
a
he
go.
team principaled this year. I think
He has a team. I don't know if he did it this year, maybe, but he used to have his own racing team, and he's done. I think he won in like 24 hours of Daytona or some other event, but the big one,
for
Le Mans 24.
half of that race, it's actually known as Night Toner.
Yeah. So good.
It's the 12 hours Daytona, 12 hours Night Toner combined.
Vector.
The day-night toner.
Every day when I get up, I put on my Daytona before bed. Put on my Night Toner.
Yeah. You got to keep things tight.
Yeah. Thanks for doing the super quiz. You got 12 out of 6.
Thanks for writing it. 12 out of 6. That feels like a great piece of work from me. Oh,
gotta
and
see-
those weren't too complicated of questions. Usually,
Well,
if it comes to film and media, I can never remember anyone's name.
It's very much my wheelhouse, isn't it?
Like, I can tell you exactly where I've seen that actor or actress, what films they were in, and who they played. Maybe not the character's name, but like what the role they had in the film. But I cannot tell you their name. I just absolutely not.
You're one of those guys. Yeah,
Like
okay.
when someone's like, "Oh," I was like, "Yes, I saw Asteroid City on the weekend. It had everyone in it. You know, all the people that are always in all the Wes
That
Anderson
guy
films.
with the face
All
and the
of
other one from the
you know, he's short with the nose, and then the other guy, he's got the floppy hair, and then the
He's
one
kind of
from
like,
the meme.
ha, get it? You know, there's that guy.
Like, yeah, not the one that goes, "Wow, he wasn't in it," but so yeah, I struggle with that. Maybe
Oh, dear.
I can never remember Edward Norton's name, but can now. Seemingly. Maybe it's fresh in the mind.
That's a fluke.
What are you going to see,
Well-
Rod? Barbie or Oppenheimer on the day?
I've got tickets to go to IMAX to see Oppenheimer, booked in. I'm an Oppenheimer.
Yeah, an Oppenheimer. I like it. I should do IMAX for Oppenheimer.
Are you going to do the double feature, the Barbieheimer double feature?
Maybe I should. 27th. I'm thinking about it. I do like everybody in those movies. So yeah.
I feel like there was a big thing about Barbie versus Oppenheimer, and then all of a sudden, from out of like it was like, which team are you on? Team Barbie, Team Oppenheimer, Team Barbie, Team Oppenheimer. Then all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, there was this news story that in Oppenheimer there's a lot of full frontal nudity, and all of a sudden the debate just sort of went quiet for a minute while everybody worked out how they were gonna react. Like we know this is important information. I'm just not sure how to process it just yet. But I mean, when I go and see it on IMAX, I can report back.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's ultra.
We're going to get an IMAX.
Ultra
apparently.
wide, full frontal, full nudity.
They
Nudity?
invented new
Nudity.
film for this. So there you go.
Okay. I think I want Barbie as the chaser. I think I want to be able to. I think
Yeah, sure.
I want to get the perk up of. I tell you what though, cannot escape Margot Robbie. I feel like every film
Oh,
I
you
see,
can't.
it is got Margot, and I'm here for it. I think she's great. But I
Well,
tell you what,
she's having
there
a
is
moment,
not
and-
a film.
Yeah, why would you want to escape from her is the bigger question.
That's it. Ah, man. All right.
Well,
good quiz. Good show, I reckon.
There's just a few grains of sand trickling out of the hourglass that we have set ourselves. So I will remind everybody, please, if you haven't yet, You can always follow us on Twitter if you really want to. If you're really desperate for something to do, follow us on Twitter. We're at Superlicense. But we, after what seems to have been some crossed threads, Zach and I have agreed, like gentlemen, that we're going to be setting up a Threads account for Superlicense. So that'll be Instagram and Threads. You can look for us there. I don't know what the handle is. You can probably have a guess what it is. By the time this is out, you could search for it. You can always go to the website, which is superlicense.fm. Zach, the FM stands for?
Futuristic monetization, which is exactly why we're getting on Threads. That's actually
Exactly
formula
right.
made. Yeah.
And whichever you like. And also, speaking of futuristic monetization, thank you so much to everybody who supports us on Patreon. Keeps the credit card from creeping into the red. Definitely keeps all the servers humming. Stops us from sleeping under the underpass. Absolutely the lifeblood of the show. Thank you so much, everybody. And I guess the newer thing is, if you wanted to, you could always check out the YouTube. But there'll be links posted out everywhere else about all that, so we don't need to clobber you over the head with it too much, because you'll be getting clobbered at a later date.
Yeah. Getting clobbered sounds like a Britishism for drunk. So got absolutely clobbered the other night.
Getting absolutely munted.
Yeah. Gee whiz. Really got on it and got clobbered. Anyway.
Zach, Hungry Grand Prix and then Spa Grand Prix, and then we'll do another show maybe during the break?
Yeah, let's do that. I think that sounds like a really good plan. And we'll be able to talk about Daniel Riccardo's wins in the Alpha Tour, shall we?
Exactly. Just posting W's everywhere.
As everyone's been saying, it's going to be nice to see some Riccardo Sonoda content. I cannot imagine two drivers more different.
I hadn't thought of that. What a culture clash.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be a
there's
culture
that to look
marriage.
forward to. Zach, please take care of yourself. Everybody listening, please look after yourself and enjoy the F1 races. And until next time we talk, my name's been Rod.
My name's been Zach.
And we'll see you on the flip side. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, yeah!